everybody, welcome to my basement workshop, which I imagine is very much like a lot of the home shops that you have, be it in a basement, a garage, maybe it's a small room in your house, maybe it's a porch, maybe it's a shed. Regardless, if you have a small wood shop, I have a feeling that the square footage I have in my particular situation is very similar to what you have. And if that's the situation, then I have a feeling that you know exactly what it's like to struggle with the layout for your shop. Now, over the years, this is perhaps the way I have mine laid out right now, the fourth, fifth time in this location alone that I've set things up. And I think I finally found a formula that works for me. And so I have this nice little layout here that you can see, which kind of shows you that some of these areas get dual usage. In fact, this particular area I'm standing in right now, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, is my bench area, my hand tools. I do my finishing, I do my assembly, I do a whole bunch of stuff here. But rather than getting into that right now, let's go ahead and take a look at the first area that I think is really crucial when it comes to shop layout, and that's back here with the power tools. Now, when it came to this part of the layout design for the shop, I spent a lot of time trying to decide where is going to be the best location for all of my tools. And I think what I have right now works out really good. Obviously, I have my table saw, my big old cabinet table saw here. I've got this nice big 8-inch joiner here. I've got my 14-inch bandsaw, my 17-inch drill press. I've got a router table. I've got my thickness planer. And actually, I've got a couple other tools behind you. But the way that they're laid out is more or less along the lines of how I usually end up working my material. And I'll talk about that in just a second here. But one thing I want to emphasize is in a small shop layout, you really need to take advantage of the limited space that you have. So all of my tools, even the cabinet saw and this jointer, are all on mobile bases. And the nice thing about this is depending on the size of the materials I'm working with or the project that I'm working on, I can roll them out of the way and free up some of that space. So oftentimes, say here on the jointer, if I have an extra long board, it's very easy for me to move the table saw slightly out of the way so I don't have to worry about the material getting hung up on it, bumping into it, whatever. So let's talk now about the workflow efficiency, because this is something that oftentimes we don't really pay close attention to until suddenly we're realizing, oh, this isn't working. And that's one reason why I have my lumber storage kind of in this area. Now, whenever I have my rough lumber, the first thing I need to do is to mill it so I have my jointer and my thickness planer. And it's very easy for me to take the boards down off of the shelf, joint them here on the jointer, and then if necessary, I can actually set them on the table saw until I've run everything through, and then I could potentially put them back up on the shelf, pull out my thickness planer, now run them through again and either use the table saw or maybe there's an open shelf. And you can see how I can keep moving things around without really ever having to stop and rearrange it. Otherwise, I might potentially have to set up some sawhorses or something to set the boards on, which means now I'm getting limited space again, and I could potentially, who knows what, it would just be in the way. So thinking about the layout of your tools in your shop is very, very crucial. You need to think about how are you gonna move through all of your processes when you're building your projects. It's no different than when you design a kitchen and you think about countertop, cooking area, and say pantry and refrigerator. You want to make sure that they're all very close to each other so you can move from one to the other without really any effort at all. You always know where everything is. It should be no different when it comes to the power tool area, or really even the next area that we'll talk about, which is over in the hand tool area. Now down here in the hand tool area, of course, we have the hand tools themselves. We have the bench. We have this little spot I'm standing in is more or less the assembly slash finish area. We have a whole entire wall dedicated to our hand clamps. And then of course we have our sharpening station. And really what it comes down to is you might be thinking, well, this is kind of where you shove everything else into that doesn't really make sense to be down in the power tool area. And that's not really true. This area is laid out in a very deliberate way. Now, of course, I have the vast majority of my tools are here out in the open and very easy for me to grab them. Now, for my own type of work that I do, having all of my hand tools exposed works out really good. Perhaps you maybe need a cabinet or something to help kind of enclose them to minimize the area that you're taking up, again, to help maximize your floor space or your open space. But for me, this definitely works out for the type of flow for the projects I work on. When it comes to this little floor space right here, which is the assembly slash finish area, you normally would be thinking that you need a lot of space for this. And I found for the vast majority of the projects that I work on, the size of the projects I work on, this space is more than enough. And if I need a little extra space, like I had mentioned, with all of my tools being on the mobile bases, it's very easy for me to say move them out of the way. But most of the time, this spot right in here works out really great. In fact, it gives me enough room to say do glue ups or do assemblies, dry fits, whatever it is I'm doing. And if necessary, I can do some finesse work over here at the bench with all of the hand tools, or if I need to head back over into the power tool area, I can still do some work over there, and it has very little effect on this particular spot. And that's a very deliberate thing because I want to make sure that if I am, say, assembling something, that I don't have to keep breaking it down every single time I need to do another task or something. It's really nice to have a dedicated spot that you can set something up and you can just keep coming back to it. And to be quite honest with you, even though it looks kind of small, there is more than enough room here, again, for the vast majority of the projects that I work on. Now again, I have all the clamps over on this wall over here, and for my particular layout, this works out perfectly. Nothing is worse than having to search all over someplace for the clamps, and the nice thing is, with my layout, they are directly across from the bench, and they're right in the assembly area, so it's just a couple of steps, and I've got them taken care of. My sharpening area, it's right over there, which again, is just a matter of just a couple of steps away from the bench, sharpen my tools, and I'm right back in action. So you see how taking a few minutes to find the really good layout, a really nice design for your shop can save you all sorts of time and a lot of energy, of course, which means that you can focus even more on those projects that you really want to get taken care of for you and your family. But anyway, so thanks for stopping by, and if you have any comments or questions, hey, please don't hesitate to contact the good folks over at Popular Woodworking, and we'll just kind of go from there. So until the next time, I will be talking to all of you later. Straight grains and sharp blades.